Here we go. Hello?
Hi there. Apologize to keep you waiting. It's been a busier day than expected, but I appreciate you being flexible.
No, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to have an interview even when you're really busy. All right.
Yeah, no, I don't have full control over the schedule with here and such, so I'm just glad to be able to chat.
All right. Thank you very much. So just really quick introductions. My name is Samuel, and this is Jasmine. She's going to be taking notes during our interview.
Hi
Um,
there.
and we are with Fast Track News at Purdue University.
Hmm.
So I think let's just get straight into the questions then.
Sure.
Right, just make sure we're recording. All right. Um, so Senator, could you give us a basic rundown of what Senate Bill 202 entails for university professors and students?
Absolutely. So the most important thing is this establishes for the first time in law that there are tenure academic protections. If you search in our Indiana code, there's nothing about tenure. It's really at the whim of the policies or the nature of the employment agreement, and that doesn't always hold up to law. So this puts into clear that you cannot be retaliated against for your outside political activity, for the content of your research, or for criticizing an administration. Now, in exchange for that, what it also does, though, is it asks faculty to come back every 5 years and give an account of what they've done with that privilege. And it establishes some criteria on which the Board of Trustees can use to determine, to make sure that the faculty are still meeting the expectations of the board and ultimately the taxpayers of Indiana. Um, some of those expectations are that they are exposing students to the best ideological or the best scholarly works from a variety of ideological perspectives. Also, that they are keeping irrelevant political views outside the classroom. I mean, it's perfectly fine when it's on topic, but in your math class, you don't necessarily need that to be use time on that. And so, what it means for students is it means a guarantee that your professors are focused on being successful in the classroom, that just because they have tenure, they aren't putting teaching on the back burner and just focusing on other things. It also means that they're continuing to thrive and be successful researchers. These are not revolutionary in higher ed. 2/3 of four-year institutions already require post-tenure reviews. This just incorporates them in Indiana in exchange for those added faculty protections.
All right. And moving on, what current circumstances or maybe events that were happening within higher ed led you or
Yeah.
inspired you to author this bill?
So I'm an advocate for higher education. I've spent most of my adult life working in Purdue's administration, and I saw around the country that there were efforts to reform higher education because, as much as I love higher education, it has some problems. And so it was important to me that we try to address those problems in a way that would respect the principles of academic freedom, that would respect the things that make American universities the best in the world, but also would address some issues that I think are legitimate. I feel like we struck that right balance.
Okay, then let's get into sort of the content of the bill a little bit.
Sure.
There's been a lot of talk from a bunch of different news sources. Most recently this morning, it was actually front page news of the Exponent at Purdue. And a lot of what the bill has focused on, or a lot of the coverage around it, is the term intellectual diversity. Now, in the
Mm-hmm.
context of this bill, what does the term intellectual diversity mean?
Sure. So the bill defines it as multiple divergent, varied scholarly perspectives on an extensive range of public policy issues. Now, the important thing to note here is contrary to some of the claims, there is no mandate that any particular idea be taught, nor is a prohibition that any particular idea be taught. It keeps that control in the hands of faculty, and that's different from some of the other bills that have been pushed in other states. All it simply does is it says that when you go in for tenure, you go in for post-tenure review, that's one of the values that you should be able to prove that you've upheld. There is no particular mandate. It doesn't mean that you have to teach the opposite of each side of idea. It just simply says you should be able to defend yourself as something that a value you've strived to express in your teaching.
All right.
And I apologize. I apologize too. I know there's some background noise here. If you need me to re-say anything, let me know. We're kind of tight space in the Senate, so we have to share space.
I mean,
I
yeah,
can repeat
well,
anything you need.
no, of course, you're sounding fine on our end. There's actually a bunch of stuff happening in the other room currently too.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
I mean,
Perfect. Well,
we're
just let
kind
me
of
know.
we're both in the same boat there a little bit. All right, Len, let's move on to some more wording. In the
Sure.
context of university boards creating diversity committees, the bill replaced the word minority with the word, with underrepresented.
Yeah.
What was the purpose for this specific change?
Well, first of all, that's been removed from the bill. It was removed yesterday.
Ah,
Originally, the intent was, Purdue University, and actually really virtually every university, the focus is on underrepresented minorities. And so the intent was to say that if you're going to have a DEI office, or as part of these already state mandated diversity committees, that part of the definition of diversity should include intellectual diversity, because that's diverse matters, and there are lots of different types of diversity, and that's one that matters as well. So it was not intended to be controversial. It was simply to just make it work with both, because it's a phrase used in higher education. But there was some who said, hey, we really like having the word minority in there, and for me it's really all the same, and so we added the word minority back in, so it's minority and underrepresented are both in the current language.
all right. Thank you for correcting me on that, Senator.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then one last piece of language of the bill that I wanted to focus on was the use of the words likely or unlikely for actions
Mm-hmm.
listed in Article 39.5, Chapter 2, Section 1B.
Yeah.
How does the board determine whether a faculty member is likely or unlikely to do those listed actions?
Yeah, well, let's look at currently how tenure works right now. Right now, there are within Purdue and other universities a set of criteria that faculty are expected to meet. And then there are committees of peers or faculty, and they conduct a performance review essentially. And that's passed on up to the provost, and ultimately the trustees make a vote at the recommendation of the faculty's peers that this person is deserving of tenure. This is going to work the same way. Um, it simply says that among the criteria, you should be able to show that, this is somebody that, yeah, they don't have a reputation as being somebody that ostracizes different, viewpoints, or ignores, appropriate scholarly works. Um, as long as they're able to demonstrate that to their faculty peers, then that's going to just, sail through just like any other tenure application. So, but the answer to that is that it's delegated, it's going to be delegated as tenure currently operates.
All right. Then let's move on to a little bit about the perception of the bill in higher ed.
Mm-hmm.
We,
Yeah.
as recently as I think this vote took place on, well, sometime earlier this week. The Purdue University Senate passed a condemnation of the bill in a vote of 81 to 5. Sorry, and it happened on Monday at Monday's meeting. Why do you think there's been such like overwhelming vocal opposition from university professors?
Yeah. Well, the University Senate I've worked with for a number of years in my private life before I was senator. And you look at the issues over the last couple of years, they questioned the tuition freezes. They even opposed bringing the Chick-fil-A onto campus. So their track record of deciding what's a crisis and what's not is frankly not that accurate. Now, with that said, it's totally within their right to object, but there's been a distortion of what this bill does. The fact that it puts in the code for the first time tenure protections and academic freedom protections, that's something that should be celebrated. But it's not really that surprising though, because tenure and tenure reform, it's the third rail of university politics. Anytime you adjust that, people get nervous because they're worried about their job security, and so I understand that. My goal is to just try to demystify what this bill does and doesn't do. And ultimately, with time, just like right now, we're not worried about the Chick-fil-A on campus, and we're grateful for the tuition freezes. This will prove to be rank among those similar things that the University Senate has condemned in recent years.
Okay. And I'm asking a bit of a follow-up to that. In what ways
Sure.
do you believe the bill has been sort of distorted?
Yeah. Well, the biggest one is the lack of recognition that this is is codifying into law tenure protections. The second is the idea that um, it's going to mandate, say that in a biology class you also have to teach creationism or something like that. That's all just made up ideas intended, either some of it innocently because people have been told that, and it's a long, complex bill, and some of it intended to create opposition. It's important to point out that I've been working with multiple universities and multiple administrators and multiple faculty members for multiple months on getting this language right. I wanted to be, as I said, respect the values that make higher education great while also addressing some problems. And when we passed it in the Senate, when we in the Senate Education Committee, not a single university testified against it. Now, there were a couple of amendments that were added, and some of this opposition came so that IU's president spoke out against it when a week or two before they had the opportunity to say something and didn't. In fact, I have been asking, is there anything we can do to, change this to make this improve? And there was no comment. And so some of that opposition has been, frankly, responding to campus politics as some of those distortions have come. But some of the amendments we passed in the House as well get us back closer to the heart of the bill, what I was trying to do. And that opposition from other universities is now nearly non-existent, perhaps with the exception of you, which, as I said, is indicative not of problems with the bill, but really some university politics that are going on that campus.
And I guess we'll make this the last question in our interview. Thanks
Sure.
again for having the time to sit down with us. Um, uh, in the list of facts paper that was sent to us, the list
Mhm.
of 6 facts that you need to know about SB 202. One of them was the sort of how conservative students on campus felt underrepresented within their university or within
Yeah.
the classroom. Could you elaborate on a little bit more about what you mean by how they feel underrepresented?
Yeah, well, the data is pretty stark, and it's been researched nationally, and it's been researched at a state level. Nationally, you can see overwhelming decline in the popularity of universities particularly among Republicans, and that should concern us no matter our political views, because we want people to come into higher education, being challenged, having their views refined, and entering into the workforce with degrees. But also, it's been researched on the state level, and it found that 46% of politically conservative students in Indiana believe they can openly express their opinions, compared to 79% of politically liberal students. Another one on Purdue's campus, as well as statewide, it found that conservative students are 3 times more likely to say their professors discourage them from commenting in class. And that should concern all of us, no matter your political views. And so it would be wrong to overcorrect that. Um, and make it so that another demographic feels like they don't belong on campus. But it's also wrong to ignore that anytime there's a demographic that feels that way. So the data is pretty overwhelming. And just as a side, I should mention there's been on the state data. If you've got time for me to explain this to you,
Of course.
there's been some concerns that the state issued a report, and that statistic wasn't in the report. And the reason why is what the state asked them, and Gallup, in partner with Gallup, is they asked every student. For example, they said, "How do you believe, what African Americans experience the classroom, and how do you believe conservative students?" And then what the state reported was what every student said. From my view, I don't really care what every student thinks about every demographic. I wanted to know, what do African Americans experience? What do conservative students experience? What do liberal students experience? And so I went through and I had them give me the data for those, and they've confirmed that it's correct. Um, this is the experience that conservatives have had, the experience that liberals have had. So the data is pretty strong, and we shouldn't ignore it, and we ignore it at our peril.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator. Jasmine, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
I do not.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sitting
Yeah.
down with us.
No, it's my pleasure. If you have any follow-ups, or if you're hearing something that seems to the contrary what I'm saying, don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to straighten things out. I'm a diehard Boilermaker. Really designed this with intent to help make sure that every student at Purdue has the best education they can receive by being challenged, being exposed, and also feeling like they belong. And I believe we're heading that direction.
All right. Well, thank you very much. If we have any follow-up questions, we will be sure to respond to that. The interview that we just gave, clips from it, will be appearing in tomorrow's newscast on our YouTube channel. But yeah, thank you very much.
Great, you bet. Thank you both.